listeners. Welcome to the BizTech Pulse podcast. We are very thrilled to invite Pradeep Tekkey, the Chief Data Officer of Harbor Capital Advisors, based out of Chicago. We definitely are looking forward for this. I know Pradeep for maybe 30 years. We went to the same school, college, and both of them joined the same day in the first job. In a sense, with PCL, we operated as competitors in the market. He moved to Middle East first, and then I followed him. He moved to US, and then I followed him after a year. That's our background. Pradeep, he grew up in Andaman, tiny island of India in West Bengal coast. Welcome, Pradeep.
Thank you, Hari, for having me on your podcast. You mentioned Andaman and Nicobar Islands. I usually get a stare when I say I was born and brought up in Andaman and Nicobar. Even back in India, nobody really knew where exactly that place was, or even if they knew, they thought it was so remote, they were surprised to see somebody from Andaman Islands. It's a tiny archipelago of islands on the east coast of India, which I think is about 1,200 miles to the east of India. It is far closer to Myanmar and Malaysia and Singapore than India, actually. Growing up was not as glamorous as people who tend to believe islands are. This group of islands is extremely tropical in nature, very humid, a lot of rain, mostly rain. It was beautiful as far as mountains and seas were concerned. One of the limitations of living in those islands, at least back when I was growing up, was we did not have a good, robust grid of electrical connections or electricity. The water was not that great. You almost had 2 or 3 hours of electricity and maybe 2 or 3 hours of water supply. You have to live with those sort of limitations around you. I still remember it was not until my 11th grade that I actually saw a television for the first time.
Wow.
There was no television there either. Growing up, my only connection to the rest of the world was a shortwave radio, and BBC was my go-to place. BBC Hindi, BBC English. That's how I connected with the rest of the world.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Given the background, after that, you moved to Nagpur. Over a period of time, you have taken various roles within Harbor Capital Advisors. Walk us through the journey.
One of the limitations of growing up in Andaman Islands was there was no, I would say, professional college education. If you had to go be a doctor or engineer or anything more sophisticated in life, you had to travel back to India and do that. I did my engineering and electrical engineering back in India, in Nagpur. I worked for a tech firm in India called PCL, primarily running around servicing computers, repairing computers and servers at that time. I still remember 8086, 80286, 80386 based servers and PCs. That was our life. Then I moved to Middle East for a few years pursuing that. But what that opened up was much more modern compute environment like Sun Microsystems and the others that I never had access to back in India. India at that time was still a closed market. There was a lot of export restrictions from the US to India. So you couldn't get the latest technology, whether it's PC or anything related to that in India, unless it was 3 or 4 years old. Moving to the Middle East in Bahrain, I got exposed to those latest technology. Of course, I came to the US to do my master's, went to University of Toledo, did information systems and finance. I got my first break at working for Dana Corporation in Toledo as an intern. Eventually, I joined Harbor in Toledo, Ohio. At that time, Harbor was a wing of Owens, Illinois' retirement team. Eventually, it spun off as its own with a mutual fund business. I moved to Chicago in 2007. I had many roles, senior VP in information technology, then CTO at Harbor. Eventually, I moved to distribution, which was mostly a business function. I headed up the distribution technology and data. Most recently, I came back to the technology front, this time a newly created department called Harbor Data Intelligence Team. Data is so important for asset management firm. Now I head up that team. We have about 13 folks specializing in data engineering, data science. That's my latest job right now.
Awesome. If you can give a sense of how big is Harbor Capital Advisors in terms of employee strength and how big is their business, just high-level breakups for the audience.
Yeah, it was based out of Chicago. We have offices in New York and Boston. All put together, we have close to about 250 employees. In technology, I would lump both data and technology under one big umbrella. I would say we have less than 30 people. My department, specifically Harbor Data Intelligence, we have about 13 employees who specialize in various data architecting related work, analytics, machine learning, data science, data engineering skills.
That's right. You had mentioned in our conversation that in 2022, there was a democratization of AI. OpenAI released a product and everybody started using it. As an enterprise organization, how did this change happen? How did you help your employee or organization adapt to this new Gen AI world?
I'll share with you my personal journey with AI and how this kind of has changed how I operate. Back in November 2022, when ChatGPT came out, I played around with it and I was really surprised how friendly the interface was, how interactive the interface was, how quick it was, how easy it was to use. I believe until 2022 ChatGPT moment, data science, machine learning, all that seemed more like a buzzword that was within the confines of few people in a company. Machine learning or data science, data engineering is not necessarily new. AI was around for a long time, but what ChatGPT did was it actually jumped from the confines of select few to the masses. It actually made it more easy for people to use with its good interface, coherent, smart answer. It seemed to know a little bit of everything. You ask it a question, it has an opinion about everything. That I think changed how we interact with an AI and how this kind of went up in sale in the App Store ranking as number one in short few weeks. My thought on this is since it gave coherent answers to any question you ask, and if you happen to be a subject matter expert in certain areas, it is actually giving you specific knowledge and domain specific information that seems to make sense. You build trust and confidence in the system. And it was far more effective and far smarter, quote unquote, than a Siri or Alexa. Until that time, people thought chatbot was mostly like Siri, but this thing seemed to be much more smarter. Since that time, of course, there are other chatbots that came about, Anthropic, Mistral, Llama, and now DeepSeek. It has exploded pretty much. I don't think people realize how life-changing this is, especially in the business environment, for people to start using these tools and exploiting it.
One of the scariest moment, I still have a couple of computer science graduate I talked to day first today. They are fearing that the hiring percentage is going down because of companies using all this, right? The low code, no code, and stuff like that. What is your take? What do you see yourself?
I think there's definitely going on. I have seen and listened to some podcasts. I've seen some blog by Daria Medowo of Anthropic saying that they've stopped hiring level one engineers. Somewhere I read stats that Google's 25% of the new code that they're writing was written by AI. To me, that definitely is a trend that is going to only accelerate. What I see happening is a lot of the basic stuff. When you go to college and do a computer science degree and you expect to get a job, you better up your game. What you can produce right out of college with 4 years of education can be easily replicated by a machine. You have to be better than a machine. More importantly, you need to know how to use a machine to produce even higher quality work. I think the entry-level jobs are going to be upgraded, so to speak. You'll have to do better. It's a natural evolution of how things are going to happen. My son goes to college doing computer science. I said, you better shape up and up your game, because when you get out and you want to find a job, it's going to be really hard if you are able to just do basic skills. You have to be better. You have to up your game.
I agree with you. Actually, people have to upgrade or be one step ahead in knowing what is going on and equipping themselves, especially the computer graduates. That's number one. Number two, the other thing you mentioned about Synthesia, which definitely threw me off. A tool like Synthesia, it can do so much thing in video graphics, editing, and the throughput. Can you share any other similar tools in other areas as well? I'm just blown away with the Synthesia.
Just to go back to the Synthesia experience that I had personally, we had to create an explainer video of a new service launch. And typical in any video production or any explainer video is you have to write up a script, you have to come up with a voice talent and a video talent, you have to create scenes, you have to create slide deck. That used to be how you would go about doing any explainer videos in the past. There are a lot of tools like Synthesia, Hagen, many that are coming up now that can do almost end-to-end work for you and accelerate that work. Here's an example. Let's say you have a presentation deck or a blog article, you want to create an explainer video of it. You can use any of your AI chatbot or any tool that you have access to large language model. You can say, okay, distill this whole 10-page blog article or whatever it is into a 2-minute video transcript. It's going to summarize the whole blog article into the key talking points and limit it to, let's say, 2-minute transcript. Then you can use a tool like Synthesia where you can upload the slide deck. If you have a slide deck or any visuals that you want to attach, you can then choose a pre-built persona within the platform and say, okay, I want this persona to actually narrate my video. You can provide it the transcript of that explainer video, or even it's an ad or something you want to talk about. Have the platform create that explainer video for you. That whole process end to end, I would say, if you have a slight learning curve, that might be like 1 or 2 hours, but then within a few hours, you're able to produce what used to take a lot of coordination, a lot of third-party companies you have to deal with. It actually shrinks that window down to hours now from days, right? That's just one example of how things are changing in the space. Another example is creating prototype. This new genre of tools called vibe coding, right? You talk to an AI agent, a chatbot, and you tell it what you want to build. It can build it for you, right? There are many of these tools available. We experiment with tools like Replit. There are other tools like Lovable, Cursor. These are all the new generation tools called vibe coding tools, right?
Is there anything for the low code, no code tool publicly available?
Most of these tools are available publicly. There is a free tier. You can always sign up. I encourage anybody to go try it out. The free tier is available in most of these platforms. However, as you get more and more sophisticated and you get hooked into the platform, of course, you have to pay a subscription. I would say most of them are reasonably priced, like $25 or $30 a month. There is nothing stopping anybody from trying it out. It's not a very expensive solution. I strongly encourage people to try it out. These vibe coding tool is you talk to an agent, you say, I want to create an application that does X, Y, and Z. It actually would build that application, give you some ideas on what features you probably want to include in it. It might even prompt you saying, hey, I built this initial framework. What more do you want to add to this application? It'll give you hints. Okay, you could possibly add this feature or that feature. You can keep building this app. What's also interesting is some of these platforms let you deploy the app. Let's say you like the app that you built and you want to actually deploy it. It provides you the ability to deploy the code into production. That accelerates the time for prototyping. It used to be weeks before to hours sometimes. These kind of tools are very good for business analysts, managers, executives who have an idea and want to put it into some sort of a prototype without having a whole bunch of people being involved in the process. Typically, if you have an idea for an application, whether it's in your business or otherwise, you probably have to get a group of people involved. You'll have to get your graphic designer involved. You'll have to get your business analyst involved. You probably have to get your software engineer involved, your software architect involved. You get them all together, or you have communication with them, say, hey, I want to build this application and this is how I want it to look like. What these tools let you do is you can have an idea and you can tell it, hey, I want to build an application. You can give it a specification. I want it to do this. I want it to send an email out to a user when they click on this link. I want to build a document subscription service and I need these features, these sort of notification. I want a user profile section. I want to build some additional bells and whistles. It actually would give you more ideas and build that for you. The idea is you can hand it over to a software developer, whether it's within your company or outside, say, here's the spec document, here's the prototype, here's the sample code in case you don't know how to integrate all these together. Here's an example of how you could do it. You can hand it over to them and they can build it for you. You can use it. All that in the past used to take many people playing different roles. Now you can actually shrink that down into few people, maybe even one, you can get accomplished. That's just the beginning, right? So you can always ask the system, I want to create test policies or create a test script to test my application that I just built. So you can use the system to actually run test against the application. There's a lot of possibilities now.
Actually, I'm just intrigued with this agentic, which again, it's the next stage in the AI stuff. If you can throw some light on the application or use cases of agentic AI.
We used to play around with certain software. In those days, I think this was only about less than a decade old. There used to be a genre of software called RPAs, robotic process automation software. Those were thick client that sat on your desktop that watched what you did, clicked, say you opened up an application, you clicked on a button and you dragged something down from that into another spreadsheet. It opened up a spreadsheet. So it watched what you did and then tried to replicate. Where that worked is typically if you're doing an AP or AR in accounting team, you do routinely certain things in SAP or your ERP system. Worked fine for those sort of things, but it usually failed when it had to do multiple different systems, whether it is logging into a website or doing certain things outside of what it had access to. It had limited use case, but never scaled well. What we now see is this new buzzword people use, Agentic AI. That seems like the 2025, 2026 buzzword. There is some truth to that whole thing. These systems, the way it is rapidly evolving, it can do a lot of the work that you could tell it to do. It can log into a website using your credentials, act as you. You just have to give it certain guidelines, as simple as I want to book a ticket from Detroit to Atlanta in the next 7 days. I want to book a hotel in Atlanta. My price range is X in this location. It can do all that. It just uses your credentials, log in to your travel site, and it can find a good hotel based on the parameters that you what you specified. It all does that autonomously for you. There are developments in that area that is fairly exciting, but if you transpose that into the workplace environment, you can really do a lot more productive work with agentic AI. I definitely feel that this is an area that is exciting. Most of the work that is happening in this large AI models is now in agentic AI or autonomously running systems.
Do you see any use cases in your industry?
Like any business, a lot of our financial data is available on the internet through different service providers. As an analyst, you probably want to go look at certain market trends. You probably want to download some file from some location and then manipulate it or transform it or slice and dice that data. Or you probably want to compare some data that you have with some data that's in a third-party website. All that unfortunately happens manually today, right? Any company, it happens manually. Where agentic AI would come into place, you can give it parameters and it can run autonomously on your behalf, doing all the work that you otherwise were doing on a daily basis or a weekly basis. That opens up a lot of productivity possibilities. You don't have to outsource that work. You don't have to do the work. You have an agent, quote unquote, a low-cost agent at your disposal that can do all that work for you.
They say you can hire an agent, it looks like. You can hire a sales agent or a marketing agent. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That also is something that is happening using a text to speech and AI personas. I think automated robocalling would be much more smarter. I would imagine that you can't tell the difference out in a year or two, whether you're talking to a human or a robot. Those are some of the areas that is dramatically improving.
Actually, I want to deviate a little bit. What do you think about the blockchain? Was blockchain a hype? How did it evolve and who are all using blockchain? If you can help me.
I used to be pretty bullish on the whole blockchain technology about a decade or so ago when it came out. Where I got a little bit disillusioned was while it held a lot of promise, there was very few use cases that I had seen of commercial use of the blockchain technology. As a concept, I think it's great in terms of public ledger and how one can have immutable record of something in a public ledger. I see the value of that. Where I saw that it was failing is the mass adoption. You cannot have a use case of a real estate public ledger if not every title company and every real estate broker subscribe to that blockchain. Where this thing has fallen apart a little bit is the mass adoption has been a challenge. The use of blockchain is provenance. Who owns this? What is the history behind that? It's all available in public ledger, so you can actually verify it. It only works if everybody buys into it. That's the
One of the challenges the title companies and the real estate, they need to adopt it. If they don't,
to some extent, that has been the challenge is mass adoption. That's why the DeFi world also is not blown up as you think it should. The concept is good, but the problem is if you don't have all the companies subscribe to that notion, it becomes very difficult to take off. I think there is a lot of good use case for blockchain within the corporate environment, but outside, it has to have that network effect like Facebook or WhatsApp and some of the other applications. When you're obligated to use that application because your friend is using that application and your relative is using the application, then you're forced to jump into that application and use it. Until that happens in the blockchain world, it's going to be very hard to take off.
I think there are other use cases. One is the credentialing in the physician's world, even the resume, right? I don't know any companies are doing, especially the resume today say you have so many fake resumes, right? If you can have one thing for every person, that will be of great value to the people hiring. You have 25 years of you have worked with Harbor Capital Advisors. You have had four major hats which you have worn in the past. I want to bring your experience. How are you able to move into various roles? The reason I'm asking this is sometimes people think if you are a CIO, you are on the CIO track, then they exit, right? They are there for 2, 3 years, they get burnt out, and then they move on. In your case, I've seen you have moved from one role to another. How did you basically transfer yourself? Is the skill sets different or the way you handle things different? If you can share some experience.
One of the advice that I give to any new employee that joined the firm, and I think that's my life lesson that I learned early on, is especially technology folks, where I spent most of my career, the quicker you are able to zoom out from your work and see the benefit to the larger business organization, how does your work strategically impact the company? You would be able to essentially grow in a company. You cannot expect to grow in any organization if you are hyper focused on one little thing and not put your work in context of a larger business goal and the larger company strategy. That was my early lesson in life that I also try to impart on any new employees. You need to start relating your work to the business benefit. If you're doing the work for the sake of working, or doing the work because somebody told you to do X and do not understand why you're doing that X, you will not be value adding to that company. You will not be able to grow. That has been my mantra, and that's how I have operated. That helped always to reposition me. Anytime I find myself getting too deep into the weeds of certain things, I reset myself and think big picture. Like, how is it that what I'm doing is benefiting the company, benefiting the group, benefiting the strategic objective of a firm? That always turns out to be guardrail in a bowling ball. It guides you back to the middle and it helps you succeed.
Very well said. I'm saying in my own organization. In a way, if people move around in various departments, taking various roles over a period of time, that will give them a perspective of, okay, when I am in the delivery, I'm doing this. When I am in sales, I have to think in these areas, right? When I'm in marketing, I have to think how the organization is promoted, branding and other standpoint. Having hats in various areas definitely bring that experience.
The key there, wearing different hats is great, but connecting all the hats together is even better. Your work in accounting, you spend some time, or technology, or in back office, or sales, how is that all tying together to the larger objective of the company? And making that connection is what's going to get you the growth. Not working on that, and I now know what accounting does. That really doesn't make much sense unless you can correlate what accounting does to what sales does.
Absolutely. 100%. A very good way of communicating to the new hires or people in the organization so that the organization is benefited in a larger picture. The last question, with the fast changes in the technology, how do you keep up? Share your best practice in terms of do you regularly read technology books or blogs or podcasts or attend seminars? If you can give me some tips how people like you keep themselves updated with everything.
I have to admit, I'm less of a reader of books. I did that when I was in school, and when I had to, I find myself listening to podcasts, which of course you could probably make an argument that you can listen to book in podcasts, which I do too. My connection to my profession and what's happening outside, especially in this space, with business, finance, world news, politics, and more importantly, technology, is podcast. Some of my favorite podcasts, especially with the news, is the Daily from New York Times. I listen to Prof G a lot, and Pivot. I enjoyed his podcast a lot. There are daily snippets of a podcast when I work out or drive a short distance. I listen to the Wall Street Journal Daily and Bloomberg Daily News. That gives me what's happening today in the marketplace. As far as the technology field, I definitely enjoy listening to Hard Fork, which is a much more humorous way of looking at technology. It's once a week, New York Times. If I want to deep dive, I obviously listen to Acquired, Ben Gilbert and David Rosenthal. It's pretty good. Specifically with AI, I definitely listen to the AI Daily Brief by Nathaniel Whitmore. He comes out with some great podcasts every day that keeps me up to date on what's happening in this space. Quite a wide gamut of podcasts I listen to, and I travel to Chicago. It's a 4-hour drive. That gives me a lot of time to catch up on all the podcasts that I would have missed during the week.
That's really great. I really thank you, Pradeep, for taking so much time and sharing your experience, your knowledge about how you have been successful. I really wish you the best.
Thank you for having me, Hari.